After 400 years of slavery, God parted the Red Sea and led his people to freedom, while Pharaoh's army was buried beneath the waves. But that was only the beginning. This journey is filled with fire, rebellion, mercy, and one man's final climb to the edge of a promise. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a moment of this powerful story. The wind had stopped. The sea was calm. The Israelites stood in silence, looking back at the water that had swallowed their enemies. Not a single Egyptian had survived. Only moments ago, death was chasing them. Now they were free. Then it happened. A sound rose from the people, soft at first, like a whisper, and then stronger, louder, until it filled the sky. A song. A shout. A cry of praise. "The Lord has triumphed gloriously," they sang. "The horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Miriam, the sister of Moses, took a tambourine in her hand. The women followed her, dancing with joy, tambourines ringing like thunder after rain. They had seen the impossible. They had walked through the sea on dry ground. And now they knew God was with them. But their journey had only just begun. Moses turned from the sea and looked ahead. The desert stretched out like a great, empty sea of sand. No trees. No rivers. Just heat and silence. The people followed Moses into the unknown, with the echoes of praise still in their mouths. 3 days passed. 3 long days in the desert without water. Their lips cracked. Their feet dragged. Children whimpered. Mothers searched for shade, but there was none. Then someone cried out, "Water!" Ahead was a place called Marah. A pool glistened in the sun. The people ran forward, fell to their knees, and scooped it up. But the moment the water touched their tongues, they spit it out. It was bitter. Too bitter to drink. The joy turned to anger. "What are we supposed to drink?" they shouted at Moses. Moses cried out to God. The Lord showed Moses a piece of wood and told him to throw it into the water. Moses obeyed. As soon as the wood touched the pool, the water changed. It became sweet. The people drank. Their thirst was gone. But the test had only begun. God led them to a place called Elim. There were 12 springs and 70 palm trees there. Shade and water. A place to rest. But they couldn't stay. They moved again. Through hot wind. Through endless sand. The people began to whisper and complain. "If only we had died in Egypt," they said. "At least there we had food. Now we're starving." Moses heard them. So did God. That evening, birds flew into the camp. Quail. The sky was full of them. The people caught them and ate meat for the first time in weeks. The next morning, when the people woke up, the ground was covered in something white and flaky. "What is it?" they asked. Moses said, "It is the bread the Lord has given you." They called it manna, which means, "What is it?" They gathered it every morning, just enough for the day. But some people tried to save extra, and by morning it was full of worms and smelled bad. God was teaching them to trust, day by day. On the 6th day, they were told to gather double. No manna would fall on the 7th day, the Sabbath, a day of rest. Some disobeyed and went out to gather, but they found nothing. The Sabbath was a gift and God was serious about it. Still, the people kept testing him. They moved again. More desert. And again, no water. "We're going to die of thirst," they shouted at Moses. "Why did you bring us out of Egypt?" Moses cried out to God, "What do I do with these people? They're ready to kill me." God said, "Take your staff, the same one you used to strike the Nile, and go to the rock at Horeb. Strike it. Water will come out." Moses stood before the people, raised his staff, and struck the rock. Water burst out. Cold, clean, life-saving water. The people drank until they were full. But the place was named Massah and Meribah, which mean testing and quarreling, because the people asked, "Is the Lord among us or not?" As if the Red Sea wasn't enough. As if the manna wasn't enough. But God didn't give up on them. Then came another threat. Amalekites, fierce desert warriors, attacked Israel without warning. Their swords gleamed in the sun. Their camels charged like wild horses. Moses told Joshua, "Choose men and fight. I'll stand on the hill with the staff of God in my hand." The next morning, Joshua led the army into battle. Moses stood on a hill with Aaron and Hur beside him. As long as Moses held up his hands, Israel was winning. But when his arms grew tired and dropped, the Amalekites pushed back. Aaron and Hur saw what was happening. They found a stone for Moses to sit on. Then they stood on either side of him and held up his hands. Hour after hour, they stayed there. Steady hands, raised toward heaven. And Israel won. God told Moses, "Write this down. I will erase the memory of Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and called it "The Lord is my banner." The journey continued. The people moved toward Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. But the problems didn't stop. Too many people. Too many needs. They came to Moses from morning till night, asking questions, seeking justice. Moses was tired. His father-in-law, Jethro, came to visit. He saw what was happening and said, "What you're doing isn't good. You'll wear yourself out." Jethro told Moses to choose wise men to help judge the people. Leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Moses listened. The burden was shared. Peace returned. Then one day they came to the foot of a great mountain. The people set up camp. A hush fell over them. Thunder rolled in the distance. Lightning flashed. Smoke rose from the top of the mountain like fire. This was Mount Sinai. God was about to speak. And everything was about to change. The people stood still. Their camp lay at the foot of a great mountain, Mount Sinai. But this was no ordinary mountain. Thick clouds circled its peak like a crown of smoke. Lightning flashed across the sky. Thunder cracked so loudly that it made the earth tremble. No birds sang. No wind blew. It was as if the whole world was holding its breath. Then came a sound no one had ever heard before. The blast. A trumpet, loud and long, echoed from the mountaintop, though no hand touched it. It seemed to come from heaven itself. The people shook with fear. Some fell to their knees. Others covered their ears. Even the strongest men were terrified. Then Moses spoke. He stepped forward, his face calm but firm. His voice steady. "God is calling us," he said. The people begged, "Please, you go. You speak with him. We're too afraid. If we hear that voice again, we'll die." Moses nodded and began to climb. Step by step, up the rocky path. His staff in hand. Fire danced near the summit. Smoke wrapped around the mountain like a storm. As Moses climbed, the voice of God rumbled like thunder. Then Moses vanished into the cloud. At the top, God spoke. His voice wasn't just heard, it was felt. And God said, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." Moses fell on his face. God gave him 10 commandments, holy laws written not by Moses, not by men, but by the very finger of God. Words carved into stone. The people below could still hear the thunder, still see the mountain trembling. They waited. Hours turned into days. Days into weeks. And still, Moses did not return. The people grew restless. "Where is Moses?" they asked each other. "Is he even coming back?" Then someone had an idea, a terrible one. "Make a god for us," they said. "Something we can see. Something we can worship." Aaron, Moses' brother, was left in charge. And instead of stopping them, he listened. "Bring me your gold earrings," he said. The people rushed to take off their jewelry, gold from Egypt. Aaron melted it all down, and from it he shaped a golden calf. They lifted it high. "This is your God, Israel," they shouted. "This is the one who brought you out of Egypt." They built an altar. They danced. They sang. They laughed and shouted and celebrated around the idol. But the real God was watching. High on the mountain, God turned to Moses. "Go down," he said. "Your people have turned away. They have made an idol. They are worshipping a golden calf." God's voice burned with anger. "I will destroy them," he said. "I will start over with you." But Moses fell to his knees. "No, Lord," he pleaded. "Please don't. They are your people. You brought them out with power and miracles. If you destroy them now, the Egyptians will say you brought them out just to kill them in the wilderness. Turn from your anger. Remember your promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." There was silence. Then God said, "I have heard you. I will not destroy them." Moses rose and took the stone tablets, God's commandments, in his hands. He started down the mountain. As he neared the camp, the noise of shouting and singing filled the air. Then he saw it, the calf, the people dancing. His heart broke. Moses raised the tablets high and threw them down. They shattered at the foot of the mountain, God's holy words, broken like the people's hearts. He stormed into the camp. "What have you done?" he shouted. Aaron stammered. "The people gave me gold. I threw it in the fire, and out came this calf." Moses took the calf, smashed it to pieces, ground it to dust, and scattered it in water. Then he made the people drink it. That day, judgment came. Many who refused to repent fell by the sword. But those who mourned their sin were spared. The next day, Moses went back up the mountain. "I will try to make atonement," he said. He stood before God again. "These people have sinned terribly," Moses said. "They made a god of gold. But now, please forgive their sin. And if you won't, then erase me from your book." God said, "I will forgive whom I will forgive. But go, lead the people. My angel will go before you." So Moses led them forward. But he knew something was missing. God's presence. Moses set up a special tent outside the camp, called the tent of meeting. Whenever Moses went there, a cloud would come down and stand at the entrance. God was there. The people would rise and watch from their tents. One day Moses said to God, "If you don't go with us, don't send us from here. How will anyone know we are your people unless you go with us?" And God answered, "I will go with you. I know you by name." Then Moses said, "Show me your glory." God replied, "You cannot see my face and live. But I will hide you in the cleft of a rock. I will cover you with my hand as I pass by." So the next day, Moses climbed again. God passed before him, not with thunder, not with fire, but with words of mercy. The Lord, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Moses bowed low. "Yes, Lord," he said. "Go with us. Forgive our sin. Take us as your own." God told Moses to chisel 2 new stone tablets. Again he wrote his commands upon them. And when Moses came down this time, something was different. His face was shining, radiant, glowing, so bright the people were afraid to look at him. He covered his face with a veil when he spoke to them. This time the people listened. They built a tabernacle just as God had commanded, a holy place where his presence would dwell among them. Every item was made with care, gold, silver, linen, wood, all according to the pattern shown to Moses. When the tabernacle was finished, a cloud covered it. The glory of the Lord filled the space. And from that day on, whenever the cloud lifted, the people would set out. When the cloud stayed, they camped. God was with them, guiding them, teaching them, preparing them. The desert was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far greater. The cloud didn't move. Days passed. Then weeks. The Israelites waited, watching the tabernacle where the glory of God rested. Every morning, the cloud still hung there, still glowing. They didn't move a single step until it lifted. That was the rule. They were learning to follow not just Moses, but God. Then one day the cloud rose. And just like that, the journey continued. It was no longer the same people who had crossed the Red Sea. These were a people shaped by fire and mercy, judgment and glory. They marched as tribes, surrounded by order. The Ark of the Covenant went before them, and God's presence was with them. But their hearts still wrestled with doubt. The days were long. The food, always manna, tasted the same. Some grew bored. Some grew bitter. One day, they cried out again. "We want meat. We remember Egypt, fish, cucumbers, garlic. But now, all we have is this manna." Moses heard them grumbling, and his spirit broke. "Why have you put this burden on me?" he cried to God. "Did I give birth to them? Am I their father? I cannot carry all these people alone." God said, "Choose 70 elders. I will place my spirit on them, and they will help you carry the load." Then God sent a wind. It swept in flocks of quail from the sea. The birds covered the camp. The people ran out and gathered them greedily, basket after basket, pile after pile. But their joy turned sour. Before the meat could even be swallowed, a great sickness swept through the camp. The place was named Kibroth Hattaavah, which means graves of craving. Even blessings become curses when the heart is ungrateful. The journey continued, but more trouble was coming. This time, from Moses' own family. Miriam and Aaron, his sister and brother, began to speak against him. "Has the Lord only spoken through Moses?" they asked. "Hasn't he also spoken through us?" God heard. He called them out, all three, to the tent of meeting. The cloud of his presence descended. Then God spoke. "When I speak to prophets, I use visions and dreams. But not with Moses. With him I speak face to face, clearly. He is faithful in all my house. Why were you not afraid to speak against him?" The cloud lifted, and Miriam's skin turned white, covered with disease. Aaron cried out, "Please, my Lord, don't hold our sin against us." Moses prayed, "Lord, heal her, please." God said, "She must be shut out of the camp for 7 days." So the people waited. No one moved. For 7 days, the camp stood still while Miriam was outside. Only after she was healed did they continue. Then they reached the edge of the land God had promised. The land of Canaan. It was time. God told Moses, "Send 12 men to explore the land. 1 from each tribe." So they went. For 40 days, the 12 spies walked through the land. They saw cities with high walls. They saw vineyards and rivers. They saw giants, men so tall they made the spies feel like insects. When they returned, the camp gathered to hear their report. 10 of the spies said, "It's true, the land flows with milk and honey. But we can't take it. The people are too strong. The cities are too high. We will die if we try." The people wept. They cried all night long. Then they began to shout, "Let's go back to Egypt. Let's choose a new leader." But 2 of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, stood up. "We can do it," they cried. "If the Lord is with us, they are no match for us. Don't be afraid." But the crowd turned into a mob. They picked up stones to kill them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared, and everything stopped. God said to Moses, "How long will these people reject me? I've shown them miracles, signs, power, and still they doubt. I will destroy them and make a new nation from you." But Moses pleaded again. "Forgive them, Lord," he said. "You are slow to anger. You are full of mercy. If you destroy them now, the nations will say you weren't strong enough to finish what you started. And once again, God listened. I will forgive them, he said. But not one of them will enter the land. Not one who saw my glory and still doubted me. They will wander in the desert for 40 years, 1 year for every day they spied the land. The people were struck with fear. Too late, they tried to go up and fight the Canaanites without God's command. They were defeated. And so, the long journey began. For 40 years, the Israelites wandered. Over hot sand and empty plains. Through rocky cliffs and dry valleys. God fed them. God led them. But the land they were promised stayed far away. One generation died. Another rose. Children who grew up under stars, not bricks. Children who learned to gather manna instead of carry whips. And through it all, Moses remained. Older now. His beard white with age. His eyes still sharp but his heart heavy. One day, the people cried out again for water. God said, "Speak to the rock, and it will pour out water." But Moses, tired, frustrated, angry, struck the rock with his staff. Water still came. But God saw the heart behind the blow. "You did not trust me enough to honor me," he said. "Because of this, you will not enter the promised land." Those words stung more than any whip. Still, Moses led them on. The end was near. They defeated powerful kings on their journey. Sinai, cities fell before them, not by their own strength, but by God's hand. They came to the plains of Moab, near the Jordan River. Across the water lay Jericho. Canaan, the promise. Moses climbed Mount Nebo. The wind blew softly on the top of Mount Nebo. There, alone on the rocky heights, stood Moses, the man who had walked with God. He looked out over the land stretched before him, hills, rivers, olive trees, and distant cities. This was the land God had promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the land of Canaan, a land flowing with milk and honey. Moses saw it all with his eyes, but he knew he would never step into it. He wasn't angry. He wasn't afraid. He was at peace. The time had come. And so, on that sacred mountain, the servant of the Lord breathed his last. The Bible says God himself buried Moses. No one knows where his grave is, even to this day. But the legacy of Moses did not die. Far below the mountain, the people waited. Their leader was gone. But they were not alone. God had prepared someone else. Joshua. He was strong. He was faithful. He had served Moses like a son to a father. Now, he stood before the people with a quiet fire in his eyes. God had placed his spirit on Joshua, and the people knew it. They said to him, "Just as we followed Moses, we will follow you. Only may the Lord your God be with you, as he was with Moses." It was time to cross the Jordan. But not just yet. God told Joshua to prepare the people. In 3 days they would move. 3 days to gather their things. 3 days to ready their hearts. Joshua sent 2 spies across the river into the land. They slipped into the city of Jericho, walled, strong, filled with warriors. There, they met a woman named Rahab. She hid them in her house, on the roof, beneath stalks of flax. "I know the Lord has given you this land," she said. "We have heard of the Red Sea, of your God's power. Everyone here is afraid." Because of her kindness, they promised to protect her when the time came. The spies returned. "It is true," they said. "The people are afraid. The land is ready." The time had come. Joshua stood before the people and shouted, "Get ready. Tomorrow, the Lord will do wonders among you." The next morning, the priests lifted the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence. And the people followed. As they reached the edge of the Jordan River, the water was full, overflowing its banks. But God had already prepared the miracle. "Step into the water," God told the priests. So they did. And the moment their feet touched the river, the water stopped. It piled up far away, and the riverbed became dry. The people crossed over, every man, woman, and child, just like they had crossed the Red Sea. When they reached the other side, Joshua took 12 stones, one for each tribe, and built a memorial, so that your children will ask, "What do these stones mean?" And you will say, "Here the Lord parted the Jordan for us." It was more than a crossing. It was a new beginning. Now they were inside the land. Now the promise was being fulfilled. But the battles were not over. They stood before Jericho, a city with walls as high as the sky. And God gave Joshua a strange command. March around the city once every day for 6 days. Say nothing. Let the priests blow their trumpets. On the 7th day, march 7 times. Then shout. No swords. No ladders. Just faith. The people obeyed. And on the 7th day, after the 7th lap, they shouted. And the walls came down. The city fell. And God gave them victory. But this chapter isn't about Joshua. It's still about Moses. Because everything they did, every step they took, was because Moses had followed God first. He had taught them how to walk by faith. He had shown them how to listen to God. He had stood in the fire. He had split the sea. He had climbed the mountain. Moses never entered the promised land with his feet. But he had already entered it with his heart. The Bible says, "Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face." And so, the man who once floated in a basket, who stood alone before Pharaoh, who held the tablets of stone in trembling hands, who walked for 40 years in dust and fire and storm, who struck the rock and pleaded for mercy and stood between God and man, became one of the greatest men to ever walk the earth. And his story didn't end with death. It continues in every story of faith, in every cry for deliverance, in every moment where God calls someone from the shadows into purpose. The man who once said, "I am not enough," had become the man through whom God did the impossible. The story of Moses is not just a story from the past. It's a call, a whisper, a reminder that God is still writing stories today. And the journey may still begin with you. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button to let us know this story blessed your heart. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next incredible Bible story coming your way. And most of all, share this video with someone you love. Because the same God who parted the sea is still making a way today. Thank you for watching. And may you walk boldly in faith, just like Moses. God bless you.